Frank is a former special operations soldier who now works as a highly skilled driver. He's a perfectionist through and through. Just as the clock strikes 10 a.m., 4 bank robbers rush into his car as he changes his license plate. But due to his perfectionist nature, Frank calmly notes that there are 4 of them when the deal was for only 3. He insists that the 4th person needs to take a walk.
Rule 1, never change the deal.
Even with a gun to his head, Frank stoically explains that now they are at risk of getting caught because his precisely planned getaway can't accommodate the extra weight. As the situation heats up and the sound of sirens looms in the distance, Frank still refuses to drive. Left with no choice, the leader makes a tough decision.
3 men, 254 kilos.
With a smirk, Frank starts the engine. He can finally show what he's capable of. His reaction time, calm demeanor, and perfectly planned route make the cops look like fools. He loses them on a one-way street as the robbers mock the passing police. Just as they begin to celebrate, they pass an unmarked police car, which resumes the chase. Driving like there is no tomorrow and making a brief pit stop, one of the robbers feels sick, and Frank suggests he get some fresh air. They continue their getaway according to plan, but they get trapped when a garbage truck blocks their way. Not a big deal for Frank. Spotting a car carrier passing by, he picks up speed and drives off the bridge, landing perfectly on the carrier's bed. The police remain relentless. Taking the robber's gun, Frank shoots the switch, allowing him to drive off the bed. Even as the situation seems bleak, surrounded by cop cars, one small maneuver changes everything. They escape. To say that the police are frustrated would be an understatement. Upon arriving at the destination, Frank is paid more than the agreed amount and is asked to drive them to Avignon. Frank refuses, citing his first rule.
Deal is the deal. Rule number 1.
He changes the license plate number and calmly leaves. At home, Frank meticulously cleans his car, finishing the last touches. In the morning, while sipping his coffee, his attention is drawn to the news about the robbers who got caught on their way to Avignon due to their poor driving. Suddenly, local police inspector Tarconi arrives to ask questions about his car. He mentions that a black BMW with 0 and 6 in the license plate was used as a getaway car in a robbery, driven by a highly skilled driver. Frank feigns ignorance. The inspector finds nothing out of place, but that's what catches his attention.
Everything is always so neat with you, Monsieur Franck. Nothing ever out of place.
Tarconi finally leaves to check other suspected cars. Shortly after, Frank receives a business call.
I'm looking for a transporter.
I'm listening.
They meet at a bar so Frank can get further details about the job. He asks for the exact dimensions and weight of the bag, but stops the man who wants to clarify to whom the package will be delivered.
Rule 2, no names.
Recounting exactly how events will unfold, he emphasizes that the deal cannot be changed. Upon receiving half of his payment, he burns the details of the arrangement. The next day, the bag is loaded into Frank's car and he starts the timer. On his way to the destination, he gets a flat tire and has to make a stop, losing his allocated time for refreshments. What's disturbing is that once he opens the trunk, the bag appears to be moving. Unshaken, Frank changes the tire as if it's just another day and keeps driving. Scratch the refreshments comment. Frank grabs another bottle of drink and a straw. A few miles down the road, he hesitantly opens the bag and a beautiful girl emerges. Cutting the tape, he lets her drink his juice.
Good girl.
Then, he is on his way once again. Not a mile into the drive, the girl starts acting up. Frustrated, Frank stops the car and pops the trunk. She demands a bathroom break, threatening that he'll have to clean the car if he refuses. Reluctantly, Frank unbinds her and puts a rope around her neck, giving her little time to work with.
You have 1 minute.
Breaking his own rules, he watches as she heads off. As the time starts to run out, Frank notices the rope is awfully loose. Following its trail, he quickly realizes she has run away. Tracking her down using the clues she left behind, Frank catches up to her and sternly voices his third rule.
Rule 3, never look in the package.
Ensuring she understands there will be no more bathroom breaks on this trip. As he ascends the cliff, he is met by 2 policemen by his car. Thinking on his feet, Frank throws the girl as a distraction and swiftly incapacitates the first officer before taking down the second.
See what comes of breaking the rules?
Finally arriving at his destination, Frank is met by the client, who immediately notes his tardiness. Frank calmly explains that he encountered a small problem on the way. As the client's henchmen take the girl away, her muffled screams fill the air. The client asks if Frank looked inside the package, but Frank, adhering to his third rule, assures him that he did not. After receiving his payment, the client inquires if Frank can deliver a briefcase for him. Following his usual meticulous process of gathering details, Frank readily accepts the job.
I like him.
But as Frank drives away, he death stares him down. Frank stops for a quick meal, and as he's finishing, he decides to buy drinks for the cops, still tied up in his trunk. This decision ultimately saves his life, as the briefcase inside detonates, destroying the vehicle in a fiery explosion. Furious about the setup, Frank decides to pay his betrayers a visit. While they're playing cards, a simple ring at the door escalates into a full-blown shootout. Pushing forward, Frank catches a gun mid-air and skillfully shoots everyone in the knees. Even the mirror aids him, covering his back. Meanwhile, the girl from the bag slowly makes her escape. Making his way further into the mansion, Frank is ambushed by two axe wielders. The fight becomes more of a dance, with Frank evading every attack and ultimately knocking them out with a fly kick. He then knocks down another guy with an MP5 and pummels the place with bullets. Not finding the client anywhere, Frank heads to the garage, hotwires a Mercedes, and busts through the front gate. Annoyed at how everything turned out, Frank hears noises from the back seat. It's the bag girl. He immediately stops the car,
You're like dog shit. You're everywhere.
leaving her on the road for the animals. But as he drives away, he checks the rearview mirror, and his conscience gets the better of him. Reversing, he pushes the bag girl into the trunk and arrives back home in the evening. Inside the house, Frank pops open a pack of noodles, microwaving them. Who makes their noodles like this? He then lays down simple rules for the girl.
I ask the questions, you answer the questions. No long speeches, just keep it simple, got it?
The girl reveals that her name is Lai and warns Frank that he's in deep trouble, but she fails to follow his rule of keeping it simple. As the noodles are ready, Frank cuts her bindings and hands her the meal while heading to bed himself. He can't think when he's tired. Lai has the option to run away, but instead decides to go through Frank's belongings. She discovers a box containing his most prized possessions and photos of his past. Somehow, this information sets her mind at ease, and she decides to stay with Frank. Meanwhile, the client, Betancourt, visits the survivors of Frank's attack in the hospital to clarify the identity of the attacker. He is surprised to learn that Frank is still alive. Betancourt wonders if the guard has shared any information with the police.
You told him nothing, right? Right. Let's keep it that way.
In the morning, Frank notices his box has been moved. In the kitchen, Lai greets him with both coffee and tea, unsure of his preference. She has also baked cookies and picked flowers. However, what Frank prefers is just a quiet morning.
Yes, quiet in the morning. I'm the same way. I like very quiet.
Lai tries hard to get on Frank's good side. Just as she goes to get the milk, their morning is interrupted by Inspector Tarconi.
And you are?
The new cook.
Tarconi lets himself in and slowly builds rapport with Frank, chatting about family and other pleasantries. Eventually, he cuts to the chase and reveals the real reason for his visit. Frank explains that his car was stolen at the supermarket, and he was planning to report it first thing in the morning. Tarconi raises an eyebrow and asks how Frank managed to get home without his car.
I brought him. I saw him walking along the dark road. He had a kind face.
Still suspicious, Tarconi asks to see the car. Immediately impressed, he remarks on the quality of German engineering. As he slowly approaches the busted bumper, Lai subtly hints that he's intruding, and he catches the hint. As Frank escorts Tarconi out, the investigator warns him to come up with a better story than a stolen car when he stops by the office today. Going back inside, Frank is furious that since Lai appeared in his life, everything has been going downhill. He can say au revoir to his quiet life.
Okay, sorry.
Frank pauses, noticing the sudden silence. Out of nowhere, a missile strikes the roof of his house. He immediately grabs Lai and dives under the table, barely surviving the blast. But it's not over. From outside, Betancourt's men pummel the house with bullets. As the firing subsides, a brief, eerie calm settles, only to be shattered by the sound of another missile being launched. Frank, sensing the imminent danger, grabs Lai and jumps on the elevator leading to the basement. As another missile hits, they dive into an underwater passage where scuba gear awaits them. They swim for what feels like an eternity until they reach a secluded beach house. Hot wiring the doors open, Frank curses himself for breaking his own rules.
Don't open the package. Nothing but trouble, you open the goddamn package.
To make up for the trouble, Lai offers herself to her savior, but Frank doesn't want to complicate things. On the other hand, whatever. Frank and Lai find themselves in Tarconi's office, being questioned about the little incident at Frank's house. Frank keeps the story simple. They had gone for a swim.
Then we came back to the house, found it on fire.
The 5,000 rounds of spent ammo makes this somewhat unbelievable.
Maybe they had the wrong house.
The investigator, aware of Frank's past, presses him about whether there are people who might want him dead, but Frank remains unyielding. When Tarconi steps out of the office, Lai quickly hurries to his computer. She searches through records of people who own black Mercedes and finds information on Betancourt. She prints it out and returns to her seat just in time to avoid being caught. Concerned for Frank's safety, Tarconi leaves them some cash, suggesting they use it to buy food and find a motel. Lai catches a cab to find Betancourt.
Where are you going?
Going to see that guy.
Good luck.
She is surprised that Frank doesn't seek vengeance for his car, his house, or even the attempt on his life. Frank explains that Betancourt likely assumes they are dead. Here's some advice.
Start over.
Lai reveals that Betancourt is a human trafficker, smuggling 400 people, including her family, in a container on a ship to live as slaves. Frank finally pieces together Lai's motives. She set him up to get involved after finding photos of him in the house. She justifies that not everything was a lie, especially their romantic moment. Meanwhile, Tarconi powers up his computer, grateful for the lead Frank and Lai provided. When Betancourt returns to his office, he is met with a slap to the face and a gun to his head. Lai searches through the papers, looking for the container number, while Frank demands to know why Betancourt tried to kill him. Betancourt retorts that Frank lied to him, broke his own rules, and opened the package.
What'd you expect me to do? Recommend you for another job?
Lai struggles to find the container number, and Betancourt would rather die than divulge any more information. Frustrated, Frank hands Lai the gun and begins searching through the papers himself. Betancourt taunts him, questioning what Lai has truly told him. Suddenly, Betancourt's secretary interrupts through the intercom, announcing that Mr. Kwai, Lai's father, is on his way up.
But your father was in a container.
Lai gives Betancourt 10 seconds to reveal the container information, but as she counts down, he defiantly tells her to shoot.
1. Shoot.
Claiming he has no idea what she's talking about. Just then, Mr. Kwai enters with his henchmen, but orders them to stand down. The tension shifts to a family drama as Kwai confronts Lai, telling her that he will never change, and she should go ahead and shoot him. Otherwise,
Get this gun out of my face.
Seeing Lai's resolve, Kwai holds Frank at gunpoint, forcing her to lay down the weapon. Despite her compliance, Kwai orders his men to kill Frank. Suddenly, the intercom buzzes, and the secretary announces that the police are on their way up. Betancourt immediately calls for Leo, who gets a hold on Frank, and Betancourt reveals the truth.
Just for the record, there are 400 people in that container. Only 395 made it here alive.
Before knocking Frank out. When Tarconi arrives, Betancourt accuses Frank of using Lai to blackmail them, pressing charges of kidnapping, extortion, and assault. As Tarconi takes Frank into custody, he instructs everyone to report to his office for statements. Frank later awakens in a cell, disoriented. His first question is about the whereabouts of Betancourt and Kwai, but Tarconi advises him to focus on his own predicament. Tarconi opens the cell and steps inside, urging Frank to provide something new instead of sticking to the old refrain of never been there, don't know anything. Frank finally admits that people are being smuggled in containers. However, all Tarconi can do at this point is initiate an investigation. It will take 12 months.
A man like you could probably resolve this case in how long? 12 hours? If you were out.
Tarconi steps aside, allowing Frank to do his thing. Frank uses Tarconi as a decoy hostage to break free from the police station. He drives Tarconi's car recklessly, swerving through the streets, making a quick stop at a pharmacy for essential supplies. Down the road, he eventually lets Tarconi out.
If this is how you transport, I'm amazed you get any work at all.
Frank tosses Tarconi's gun back as he readies for a fight, but Tarconi believes he will need it. Or maybe not. On his small boat, Frank navigates to the Marseille port, where containers are being loaded onto trucks. Equipped with a stethoscope he snatched from the pharmacy, Frank moves from container to container, listening intently for any sounds from inside. His attention is soon drawn to Lai, and he overhears Betancourt giving precise delivery instructions to the driver, noting that they will be shadowing the truck closely. Meanwhile, Lai is arguing with her father, and her comment,
I hate you,
makes him snap, forcefully dragging her with him. But a gunshot catches their attention. It's Frank. He's been spotted.
Give me a minute.
Frank targets the henchman's legs, deliberately avoiding lethal force. Suddenly, Betancourt disarms him and starts pummeling him until he's on the ground.
Keep him alive.
As the henchmen close in from both sides, Frank cleverly uses the container door to divide their attention. He dispatches them with precision before leaping onto the container to see Betancourt driving away. Without missing a beat, Frank sprints after the truck, barely managing to leap onto it. The driver spots Frank clinging to the truck and swats him off with a signpost. Frank lands on a passing bus, but the henchmen, intent on avoiding a scene, refrain from opening fire. Instead, they ambush Frank at a bus station. He takes down the first 3 henchmen swiftly. But as he continues to flee, it seems like they're multiplying. Cornered in a bus, Frank finds himself in a tense standoff. Despite being outnumbered, Frank manages to subdue everyone without killing them. But the real challenge appears, a final boss. Frank endures a brutal beating at first, but with his nutcracker technique, he turns the tide. As Frank is locked in a headlock, more henchmen arrive. Frank spills the strategically placed oil to trip them up, then ducks into the slick mess to evade his attackers. He slides to a nearby bike rack, quickly mounts the bike pedals, and, with surprising grace, maneuvers through the chaos while knocking out opponents left and right. When more guns arrive, Frank uses the final boss as a human shield, making a daring leap into the water. The henchmen drop an oil barrel into the water and ignite it, convinced he's finished. But Frank remains in one piece. Returning to the first subdued henchman, Frank grabs a gun and steals a nearby car to chase after Betancourt. However, his high-speed pursuit takes a toll on the vehicle, and it soon breaks down under the strain. Frustrated, Frank spots a crop duster and quickly devises a new plan. He chases down the plane and kindly asks the farmer to assist him. Frank catches up to Betancourt in no time. After leaving Tarconi's number and coordinates to the farmer, he leaps from the plane, parachuting directly onto the truck. As Frank's parachute ejects, it sends a car into a spin, causing a following vehicle to slam into it. Frank makes his way into the cabin, and in the chaos, the driver clings desperately to the door. The door breaks off, sending the driver plummeting off a cliff. Betancourt instructs his men to overtake the truck, but Frank skillfully blocks their attempts. They fire at Frank's rearview mirrors, forcing him to hold glass in his hand. Just then, Frank catches sight of Betancourt in the cabin and manages to knock the gun from his grasp. A fierce struggle ensues, with Kwai providing covering fire. As Frank wrestles to keep the truck steady, he once again employs his signature nutcracker move. However, Betancourt takes advantage of the moment, yanking the handbrake and sending Frank crashing through the front window. Betancourt believes he's finally dealt with him. Fortunately, Frank manages to cling to the underside of the truck. Kwai notices him and starts shooting, but misses thanks to Lai's intervention. This distraction gives Frank the opportunity he needs. He grabs a lug wrench and hurls it at the driver, causing the car to crash. Frank climbs onto the truck and jumps into the cabin. After a fierce struggle, he manages to overpower Betancourt, throwing him out of the truck. As the truck finally rolls to a stop at the beach, Frank exhales in relief. His respite is short-lived, however, as Kwai suddenly appears, aiming a gun at him. Kwai demands that Frank march forward, ordering his henchmen to kill his daughter if he doesn't return. He forces Frank to the edge of a cliff, giving Frank a chance to seize a rock. Kwai, convinced that his daughter will eventually follow to his will, sneers at the thought of her disobedience. But before he can say more, a distant gunshot shatters the moment.
Guess she won't be coming around after all.
As Kwai prepares to kill Frank, he's suddenly shot. It was Lai.
He was a bastard, but he was still my father.
Frank comforts her. At the same time, Tarconi arrives with his force. As they open the container, Lai's voice calls out to her sister, and a wave of relief washes over them. They've successfully rescued hundreds of people from their captivity. The end.